All right, let's go ahead and talk some Indians baseball and, of course, some Mark Shapiro with Zack Meisel. He joins us. Zack, how are you doing?
Not too bad, guys. How are you?
Doing well, and of course, you can check out Zack's conversation with Mark Shapiro at cleveland.com/tribe. Zack, in talking to Mark, look, he's never really going to give you much on the record, but how do you feel he views his legacy with the Indians?
Well, I think there's a reason why when you ask him that question, he says that he doesn't really think about it, and that he focuses on a great season that the Indians had in 2007, which was almost 9 years ago, and he talks about the relationships he built. And the Indians, hey, give him credit for somehow, some way, there have been so many people in that front office who have gone on to get prominent front office roles elsewhere. So he focuses on those kinds of things, and I think there's a reason he does that. Because if you've spent 24 years in any place, it's pretty hard to believe that you haven't thought about what your legacy is in that city when you finally move on. So, I don't know for sure, but I think this is his way to kind of evade that answer by focusing on some other things that he is proud of.
Zack, whether it's fair or not, I feel like the view of Mark Shapiro in this city is a lot different than the view of Mark Shapiro around Major League Baseball. Do you believe that that is the case? And why do you think Shapiro is looked at in such a positive way when you talk to people around the bigs?
Well, I think for anyone in, it seems, maybe any job in the world these days, to stay in one position with one company for 24 years is pretty remarkable. Now, saying that, the Dolans don't exactly hire and fire guys like the Browns do, and it's not like the front office has had a whole lot of turnover. So it's a little less incredible that Shapiro lasted 24 years in Cleveland and could have lasted as long as he wanted, probably. But he does have respect around the league. And, I mean, case in point, the Toronto Blue Jays, who are a very competent team and won the American League East last year, made the ALCS, they tabbed him as the guy. So he's dealt with a tough situation because the Indians haven't had much of a payroll since the Dolans took over. And they've had mixed results, but I think just the way he oversees an operation, this is me speaking for what I think the rest of the league views him as, I think he's succeeded in some ways at that. And I guess he's just got really good knowledge. And I will say this, he's good at building relationships. He's good at communication with other league executives. And he's got a lot of friends around the league.
Zack, you didn't seem to want much to do with your question about whether the Browns offered him the position that eventually went to Paul DePodesta either. Again, did you get a sense, though, from him that maybe that did happen?
I don't know if he ever officially got a job offer from Jimmy Haslam, but I do sense that they wanted his expertise, they wanted his input. And this kind of goes back to your last question. I mean, the teams are turning to him to ask, okay, how do we put together a front office or an organization that's going to be on the right track to put together a team on the field that we want. And so he worked with Alex Shiner, he worked with Sashi Brown, and again, I don't know if there was ever an official offer made, but it sounded like they enjoyed working together, and it a lot depends on the timing too, because Shapiro was pretty much dead set on going to Toronto by the middle of the summer, by June or July. So it would be interesting to know from Jimmy Haslam when did this all go down? When did he want to talk to Shapiro? When would he have offered him a job if he did?
You've had numerous conversations with Mark Shapiro. For a number of years, Zack, he's been linked to the MLB commissioner if that ever becomes available again for him. And now you have reports about maybe an NFL team wanting him to be a part in some way, some kind of capacity. What do you think is next for Shapiro after this Toronto thing? Could you see him maybe making a switch?
Yeah, I mean, you wonder what's left for him because he was president in Cleveland, he presided over the business and the baseball operation, and now in Toronto he's got all the power. He's got autonomy over there. He's the CEO, he's the president, he's the one that handpicked the general manager, and he's the one that's going to be in charge of everything they do in all facets of the organization. So what is left? I mean, he spent 24 years in Cleveland. I don't know that he's going to want to spend 24 years in Toronto. And you ask yourself that question, and it's okay. You could try your hand at a different sport, and maybe the NFL comes calling somehow. And don't think that Paul DePodesta, who worked under Shapiro in Cleveland, getting that job is a coincidence. I mean, there are ties there, and you can ask yourself, did Shapiro recommend DePodesta? I think that's a good question if Jimmy Haslam ever opened up about this kind of stuff. But, yeah, I mean, I think something like league-wide for Shapiro or something in a different organization would seem to make sense. And Shapiro's a guy that he says he doesn't really look too far into the future, but I think once you get to these kind of positions and you're moving up, I think you do ask yourself, what's left for me to accomplish, aside
Zach,
from winning a World Series.
Yeah.
Zach, a real quick baseball question before we let you go. The Indians, of course, they've added Mike Napoli and they've added, a couple other guys, maybe have their eyes on some other guys. But the more I think about this team and how they've been built around this core of guys like Jason Kipnis, Yan Gomes, Michael Brantley, those guys haven't really had a ton of pressure on themselves to perform. But is this kind of the year when people look at those guys and say, look, if this team is going to do anything, it's going to be on you guys?
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it and say, okay, they've done a really good job of laying the foundation. And they've signed all these guys, Kluber and Carrasco and Brantley and Gomes and Kipnis, to long-term contracts, and they're not making a ton of money right now. So it's kind of in the perfect position if you're the Indians, if they had the money to add other people, which I don't think the Dolans are going to spend much more than they already have. So it is up to those guys to say, I mean, this is what you have, and there's a reason why we made you the core players, and now you have to perform and you have to produce and prove that we were right in locking you up to these extensions and pegging you guys as really the leaders of the franchise. And you're right, we haven't seen them do that. They had the pressure of lofty expectations last year, and they crumbled early on, and they had to play catch-up after that. So it'll be interesting to see, because I think there's going to be a little bit of pressure with Michael Brantley out. Can this offense back up the starting rotation and the pitching staff? And so I think if they get off to another slow start, and it's another year like the ones we've seen recently where they're behind the eight ball from the get-go, I think you're going to ask yourself, can these guys handle it?
All right, Zack Meisel joining us. Go read his story, his interview with Mark Shapiro, part of his Thursday Conversation series that you're going to start seeing every Thursday. Cleveland.com/tribe is his first one. Look, no matter what you think of Shapiro, he's probably one of the most prominent people in Cleveland sports over the last 25 years. Thanks for the time, Zach.